So, with the episode, I mean that's such an important point. There's been a lot of criticism of the way that Law and Order SVU portrayed the situation of women in the gaming world. And again, we are spoiling it for SVU fans. But the female game developer ends up leaving the industry at the end of the show after having been kidnapped and assaulted and attacked and threatened. And she says, "Women in gaming, what did I expect?" In a way, it seems like she's kind of putting the blame on herself to a certain degree. Like, I treaded into this boy zone, so, what was I thinking? What was your take on that ending?
It was terribly difficult to watch, not just for me, for, the women at my company and for women I know in video games. Like, for instance, Jen Frank is a name you don't hear a lot, but she's a woman that was bullied out of the industry by Gamergate. And, I was talking to her about this episode, and it hurt her deeply because she did end up quitting, and it made her feel blamed for it. So, I didn't expect, like, a Law and Order episode that really caught all the nuances of this issue. And, I'm not angry at them, but I think they missed an opportunity to tell a better story here.
Yeah. Do you also, talking to women in the industry, are you also hearing from women who have decided that, like, I guess like this character, that it's not worth it to even enter into the industry to begin with? I mean, are you seeing it's become harder to recruit or retain younger women?
I went through my email recently to count up how many young women had written me and told me they were going to give up their game of becoming a game developer and their dream of becoming a game developer. It was 26 women. I can tell you firsthand, I know many professionals that have looked at the situation and said, I'm going to go do something else. I'm an engineer. I can do many other jobs. I actually know a celebrity, one of my lifetime inspirations for being in the field. And she was going to reboot one of her shows that was very, very popular. And it was one of the reasons I joined this field. And I was talking to her recently, and she's choosing not to do it because she's terrified her young daughter, will be targeted by Gamergate. So, it may be see no evil, hear no evil in the way the industry reports it, but I can promise you behind the scenes, we are hemorrhaging women.
Yeah. Do you think there's any worth in trying to I mean, if the Law and Order episode is flawed, one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning when we first started talking was the fact that after all the attention that this issue got in October, there was a sense of, we've done that, we've covered that, we've moved on from that. Is it important, even in flawed ways, to try to bring this issue forward to a mainstream network TV audience, people who, may not be following Gamergate, may not be involved or know about the game industry, but may now know about it because of Law and Order SVU?
I think so. I'm as a software engineer, I'm a pragmatist. So, I will take someone raising the issue in a flawed way, for the greater good. And, something I think is important for the public to understand, this isn't about games. In your field, journalism, in the 50s and 60s, there was a similar kind of strife there about women entering the workplace and being able to have careers in a place that was kind of traditionally very male dominated. And, we're experiencing the exact same thing here in games. It's just a different industry and a different time. So, I think it's a really easily understood issue for the public. And I actually feel appreciative to the Law and Order producers for putting this episode forward, even though it was very difficult personally for me to watch it.
What do you think people could do better in terms of covering this issue, whether it's fictional or factual? Are there key points in what's going on or things that people are missing about understanding the gaming world that you think the media could do better in covering, for instance?
That's a really great question. I think the thing that I see most often is kind of putting the blame on the Gamergaters themselves and making them the focus. I want to be really clear here. What they're doing is awful. There was a high-profile op-ed a few weeks ago that called it emotional terrorism, and as charged a word as that is, I agree with it. But I think that if I were asking the media to do anything differently, I would ask them to understand this. This is not a problem with gamers. This is a problem with the people and the culture making games. When the game companies are so male-dominated, making games that consistently cater to adolescent male fantasies and kind of represent women as sex objects and girlfriends. That has consequences. It sends a message to players that this is their space. When women cannot get careers in game journalism as easily as men get careers in game journalism, this has horrible consequences for the industry. It skews coverage. It means that work by women is devalued. And, it just means that we can't get a fair shake. It also has consequences for how Gamergate is covered. So, if I were asking the media to do anything, it would be, don't let the big game companies and don't let game media like IGN, Giant Bomb, and Game Informer off the hook. They are the primary reason this problem exists.
Do you think that there is sort of a misunderstanding of the gaming industry, or there's a bit of dismissiveness because people sort of write it off as nerd culture or geek culture, so they almost don't take the men that are doing it that seriously? Do you think that plays into it at all?
Absolutely. There's a huge misconception that, I'm told many times a day that, this is just teenagers. The average age of a gamer these days is 37. And, I think it's also important to note that, the market is now 49% women. 49%. That's a huge explosion in the number of women gamers. So, being a gamer, it's no longer a kind of adolescent male activity. It's a human activity. We all like to play games. And, I guess I would just ask people to understand, like, these stereotypes, they haven't been true for about 20 years.
Well, yeah, and it seems to me then if you're talking, I hadn't been aware the number of women gamers was so high. That just seems like just dumb business sense not to make that world more positive and safe for women within it.
I completely agree. This is what my company is about. It's not that I want to censor, games with very sexualized women, or I want to get rid of like these kind of violent military shooters. My only mission as a businesswoman is saying, hey, half the market are women. Let's go over here and make some games for women. Let's have women making the games, and then the experience feels more genuine. All I want to do is make a different product for a different audience, which should not be controversial at all. And yet I have people that are literally trying to destroy my company. And, I think it speaks very poorly for the state of the industry.
The last thing I want to ask you, how hopeful are you that this is going to change, that the efforts of people like yourself can make a difference to make the world more equitable?
I think it's hard to overstate just how terrible a toll this has taken on me and Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian. Zoe very correctly said lately that this has ruined her life. And, when I'm kind of feeling dark, I agree with that. This has had a terrible toll. But, I grew up in Mississippi, which is a state that's kind of rife with, racism. And, I've seen people not standing up to that, and I've seen the way it perpetuates. So I wouldn't be putting, everything on the line like I have if I didn't believe we were going to make it better. And I'm very confident that in 20 years, the industry is going to be very different. And, history books are going to note what Zoe, Anita, and I have done.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated speaking with you.
Always love coming on. Thank you.
Thanks. That was game developer Brianna Wu. She joined me by phone.